Today, we have for you the voice of the Cavaliers. And no, we're not talking about the Cavalier Connection, but we are talking about the one and only Director of Broadcasting, John Freeman. Listen in as he gives us his thoughts on the upcoming football and basketball teams. We will also discuss how he got his start in the media world. We thank you for tuning in. Give us a follow at Cavalier Connection Podcast on YouTube, and we will bring the content next on the Cavalier Connection.
Welcome on into another edition of the Cavalier Connection Podcast. I'm your host, Jack Lowe, and as always, joined by my dad, Jeff Lowe. Tonight, we have the voice of the Cavaliers joining us, John Freeman. How are you doing today, John?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me on. This is admittedly the first podcast I've ever done hosted by a father and son. So that's special. I'm honored to be on this one.
Awesome.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we're so glad to have you on. It's an absolute pleasure. So we're going to start out a little bit with how you got started with the media industry. So we researched, so you are a 2009 UVA graduate with a degree in media studies. So after that, how would you say you got your start in the media industry?
Man, I wouldn't say after that. I'd say before that, I got my start in the media industry. So I was lucky enough to grow up outside of Charlottesville in Crozet. I went to Western Albemarle High School. Which very soon the world's going to know about because Thomas Heilman, the swimmer, was a student there, and he's going to go to the Olympics and put Crozet on the map. But well before he was born, which dates me quite a bit, but I was a young student intern at Western Albemarle High School right here with the Virginia Sports Radio Network with a guy who sat in this very studio that I'm sitting in right now, a guy named Mac McDonald. So I started when I was 16, interning with the voice of the Cavaliers, and always knew I wanted to be in this profession since I was a young kid, and was able to get my hands into it from the second I could drive. I started out at Charlottesville Radio Group, going in and answering phones and working on their morning show before high school even started. I would go in at like 5 a.m. and dodge deer on Garth Road to get there and answer the phones and work with Mac some, and then go to high school that day. So started out as an intern, then made it to UVA and stayed with Charlottesville Radio Group doing anything that they would give me. So my first play-by-play experience was with Virginia Lacrosse. Mac left in the spring, I believe, of my second year at UVA. And truly, they needed somebody to broadcast lacrosse on like 4 days' notice. And I happened to know how to set up the equipment, and the game was in Durham because we were playing Duke. So it wasn't like I got hired because of talent. I got hired because I was the only single one that had to set up the equipment. And as a 19-year-old, had a free enough calendar to just go for the weekend. So I got my start way before I graduated, and I was doing play high school football, Virginia lacrosse, working with the radio network, interning, cutting audio, anything I could do before I graduated. And then after I graduated, I continued in a radio path, and eventually it led to where I am now.
Awesome. Were there any mentors that you had along the way that helped you get into this point of your career?
Oh, I mean, how long is this podcast? I could go for the whole hour. But the first guy that I mentioned, Mac McDonald, is instrumental. I still keep up with him. Last time I saw him, it was really neat. We played an NCAA basketball tournament game in Orlando, and he lives in Orlando. And we met up, and I thought, like, how cool is this? Like,
oh, that's awesome.
I'm sitting here having dinner with him, and this man is so instrumental in my career. And here I am as a voice of the Cavaliers, having dinner with the old voice of the Cavaliers, and I even still felt like a little bit like I was in the presence of a star next to him. And it's really cool that, you know, in his position, he had been established. well-known, incredibly talented broadcaster. I emailed him when I was 16 years old and had no experience in the radio industry, and he took me on as an intern. Like, what in the world was he going to get out of that? And he didn't get anything out of it. And he even wouldn't let me buy dinner when I met him in Orlando. But he was huge, and I wouldn't be where I was without him. And the other is the man who came after him, which is Dave Kane, who took over my last year of college. And I was fortunate to have that overlap because I established a connection with Dave Kane, and we worked together a little bit more, me doing odd things for him as opposed to us really working as one. But kept in touch with Dave, always got his advice on my play-by-play, and he was instrumental in giving me instruction on how to get better, and also just advising me in general on the broadcast industry, because he was in a position that I wanted to be in. And then truly, when Dave was leaving Virginia to go to the Milwaukee Bucks, the way our industry works is, you get hired and that's kind of it. You got to go fast. It's sports.
Yeah.
A lot of coaches get hired somewhere else and get to coach another game. And that's kind of how it is with broadcasting. So Dave got hired by the Bucks, and they needed somebody the next weekend to call a Virginia football game in Louisville. And I'm so grateful that Dave advocated for me. And I got hired for that one game, and that was my Super Bowl. And then I got hired for another game, and then I got hired for the permanent gig, and hopefully it's a job that lasts decades and decades.